I want to start with the path that led you to Famous Toastery.
Oh gosh. Well, I want to start with the fact that we both are much more handsome than our voices, and that this was, you know, the hard part with history, Josh, is knowing where to start,
Yeah.
right? So I was 10. I asked for a bike. My parents got me a paper route. When I was
Mm.
15, you think I'd have learned my lesson. I asked for a car. I got my first dishwashing gig, right? That's how it started. I've been doing restaurants. I came up through the ops side my whole life, and I was really attracted to brands that I felt like weren't, the big box brands or giant branded things. My first concept that I thought of restaurants in a career was called Harrigan's. Anybody in DFW would know it, or in Texas, but that was a better than it had to be, very fairly priced steakhouse that was dead on about service. And I saw a lifestyle there that, you know, the, these guys weren't all working 100 hours a week. They had families, and it looked like a place where you could grow and raise a family. So I was there 13 years. That morphed into Don Pablo's. And for a lot of us that came up in that culture, in that organization, we've been looking for a concept that mirrored that, where you were allowed to have a family. And, there was a strong moral compass for the brand, but it wasn't the giant big box concept that you want to be part of a community. And I've had a few steps along the way. Before becoming the president at Famous Toastery, I was the VP of Ops and Development at Mooyah Burgers, Fries, and Shakes. Really proud of the work and the franchise base that we were able to build there. And I did know the managing director of Famous Toastery from that relationship. But this brunch space, that we're in is really a pretty cool and sexy endeavor and a nice place to be at this point in time. So culturally, it matched up for what my wife and I were looking for at this time in my career, and just in time of our lives. Our last kid had graduated from college, so I think the law says I'm done. I don't have to fund anything else. But it was just time for one more adventure in Famous Toastery for us. Had the culture, had a really sexy day part aspect to it that we're excited to be a part of, and then the brand itself, just being committed to quality. So that's what got me here.
And were there mentors along the way? Were there people that taught you what you know today?
Absolutely. I'll tell you a funny story. I ran into one of my guy that was my trainer at Harrigan's in 1980, is the owner and founder of a direct competitive concept out in California called Huckleberries. But Greg Graber, he's got a nice little concept going on out there, and ran into him at a trade show, and it was great to catch up. Proud to say he was a mentor for a lot of years. He was there the entire 13 years I was at Don Pablo's and Harrigan's. Yeah, I'd shout out to him. Michael Mabry, our managing director here with our parent group. I've known him on and off for 20 years, and he's got a lot of experience, not just in franchising, but brand development, and what takes a restaurant from, a small, idea into something that multiple people can do better than make a living at. As you know, with your experience, that doesn't just happen granularly. It's a lot of effort from a lot of people, and he's been through that a few times now. So those two guys come to mind. I've got a couple of brother-in-laws in the business that you know they'll probably listen, so we're not going to give them any credit. We'll talk about it at Thanksgiving, but a lot of people to get me where I am for sure.
And what did you learn? I mean, like, what were the lessons that you were able to take away from those relationships that enabled you to succeed
Yeah,
professionally?
I think the core value is that you have to earn the right to drop the check. If anything, well, first of all, no one person's reputation is more important than the concept of the brand. And I've seen people fall down there. The places I've been that have made it have been about what the guest is experiencing. And then, a lot of guys get bogged down in costs and how much stuff happened, and rent factors, and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, there's one key metric through all the OSATs and all the other stuff that people get lost in. And that is, are you growing guests? And it's got to be for and about the guest. And all the people that I would give credit to that have gotten me where I am in my career, That's a common thread because the people I just described to you, you couldn't have more different human beings than those guys, right? But that's a common thread through all.
It really comes down to zealotry, right? That's the major influence is this passion for people. And it manifests as food and it manifests as beverage. But ultimately at the end of the day, I think the mentors in our lives in this industry that are most inspiring are passionate about people. And I guess my next question to you that would follow up is it's really easy to lose that after 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
It's over time it's easier to love the food than it is the patrons. And so, how do you keep it?
Well, to your point, the term zealot works, right? And who your friends are matters, right? The people you surround yourself with, and being in a like minded culture and a culture of zealots is a great place to start. But I'll tell you this: when people, my friends, see something like that creeping up, the people you call your friends don't let their friends suck. I'll tell you who you surround yourself with, they're going to be really honest about what it is you're delivering. And if you're surrounded by zealots, that's a great term. I think I'm going to use it around here.
Send me $5.
You got it. You can take a check on a foreign bank, I assume. But yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of ways to monetize certain self-help things, but I think for me, it's always been the simplest: is what are we best in the world at? Are we doing that thing? I've been in part of a lot of brands that have expanded menus and let stuff get away from it. The guest no longer knows what it is you're famous for, and that's been part of the process here. Zealotry is really going to be around some core items that we truly can deliver best in the world, but you got to do it in a manner where value is not what you pay, but what you get,
Yeah.
and the guest has got to get it every time, or someone else is going to earn it. It's the coolest thing about what we do for a living, right? Is that he who executes best wins, and you got to do it with some flair and some panache. And every day's not the same day. It's not the same checklist is going to get you to the other side.
Value is not what you pay, it's what you get. They
And
should
you
put
can
that
send
on
me
a
$5
t-shirt.
for that, Josh.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. That's worth at least 75 bucks.
There, no,
That was a winner. I'm gonna write that one down. Let's talk about the business of breakfast and the business of brunch. So there's this conventional worldview in our industry, and Lord knows I held it for a really long time. It says if you're paying rent 24 hours a day, you need to make money 24 hours a day. So focusing on one service, especially one service, which is a statistically lower per customer average spend than, let's say, dinner, feels like a recipe for disaster. Also, if people are showing up late to a 5 o'clock in the afternoon shift, how are you going to get them in at 5 o'clock in the morning? So it seems terribly broken on its face to me. Explain to me why this is a winning strategy, Mike.
no way. I'm not going to give it away. Okay. Actually, that's why you're kind enough to invite me on. Well, first of all, you tell me a place that's socially acceptable to have a champagne at 10 a.m. Right? I mean, it's pretty stinking cool, and everything that goes with that is why it's a one shift operation. I mean, that's really what we're dealing with here. We're not doing a flip from lunch to dinner. We're not doing a flip from dinner to late night or dinner into happy hour. The whole vibe of what this space is about is the one shift, and obviously there's economies of scale that relate to that. With just I don't have to cover a multiple shift per operation day. And I get where folks are coming from, that you're trying to maximize that rent factor. But if you can maximize it with maximum efficiency, fish when the fish are biting between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. like we do. Others are going 8 to 4. Some are doing fewer hours than that. Then you've maximized the other 90 of your profit and loss statement just right there with high intensity, high velocity in a really cool setting. So yeah, the numbers really do work pretty favorably, particularly as salaries and costs have increased over time. You can do it a one shift operation with fewer people than you can a two or three shift operation. And I'm with you. I think that the business model, the three shifts a day or two shifts a day, can work for people. It certainly doesn't interest me.
Right. Because it's three jobs, it's three different businesses. I have that conversation with clients all the time where they're like, we're thinking about opening for lunch, or we're thinking about starting late night, right? Or we'll do Sunday brunch. And it's like, it's a whole different company. It's a completely different business that you struggle with launching, building awareness, creating repeat business. Every shift that you launch is independent.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
because you're busy for dinner doesn't mean you'll be busy for lunch.
Yeah, we have a nice mix at Famous Toastery. It's half breakfast items, half lunch day part, but a lot of people like the fact that they can get a breakfast item at two in the afternoon at our place. It's a completely different vibe. And another piece you touched on, the 5 a.m. schedule works for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that want to be home for dinner. You know, and we offer that quality of life in this day setting. If you're still in a Famous Toastery at 4 o'clock, um, you're not very good at it. You know,
Do you find that some of your people are working at two restaurants simultaneously, that they're doing mornings and afternoons for you and then evenings other places?
we have professional line cooks, which are no longer a dime a dozen.
Mhm.
These folks that are absolutely experts in their discipline certainly have a market out there where they can take on a couple of things, but they get to be picky and choosy. And I doubt that those, if they are working a second job, I doubt they're doing it 7 days a week. They're doing a schedule that works for them. And because we can offer 5 days in a very specific day part, we tend to be their primary position. So it's helped us influence who we're getting. You know, the best cook at the steakhouse down the street certainly doesn't mind showing up at 5 a.m. to start whipping up flapjack batter. It's a nice piece.
Well, I would also think that your food cost is better, right?
There is no cheaper form of protein than the egg until January of 2020. I mean, eggs went nuts on us a little bit. We're not necessarily insulated from what happens with commodities and markets and all that stuff. But yeah, you've got a better starting point in the breakfast space than you do with steakhouse or what's happened with chicken. Now I understand chicken's probably cheaper than eggs right now, but that's all supply and demand. It is a very good economic model for a base.
Do you look at IHOP as a competitor, and as you see them trying to push into other day parts, is there any concern as you guys scale that maybe this isn't sustainable at massive scale?
I don't. A couple reasons why. I think they're feeding the masses, and we're feeding our communities. So it's a little different approach to business. I don't have a standard prototype. There's not a box for Famous Toastery. I can go in a house. I can go in an end cap. I can do a lot of things with this branded concept. But the key to it is being hyper local and really being a gathering spot in our community. It's not traditional lunch, not traditional dinner, not trying to feed 42 people all at once, although we can certainly do those things. What we do is provide just a really good gathering spot, a nice third place for folks. That's going to be a lot more laid back than just that transactional experience. It's got to be seated with hospitality. So I will put a Famous Toastery next to literally any other concept, IHOP included. That doesn't concern me. I think that what we do, we're going to do well and win it.
Everybody loves innovation, right? Like it's a non-traditional breakfast spot, it's a non-traditional lunch spot. You guys are serving a different market in a different way. And on its face, everybody loves innovation, right? But everybody's afraid of change. Everybody's afraid of different, you know? And so when you enter these new markets and you do business differently and you do provide alternatives as it relates to breakfast, brunch, and lunch, it is a different model. How do you infiltrate the community? How do you let people know what you do in a way that resonates with a new community?
Yeah, there's regional flair in all cuisines, right? I mean, I'm in North Carolina now. I grew up in Iowa and was raised most of my life in Texas. I mean, there's three very different barbecue opinions that are going to happen there. So, a famous toastery goes into Western North Carolina where liver mush is a thing. We have to have the best liver mush available to human beings. Now, liver mush is called scrapple in Virginia, and we operate in Virginia. So we have some scrapple on the menu in Virginia, as long as it's a best in the world offering. That's it. But ultimately, on the grander scheme, the guest is going to tell us what it is they want. I mean, we're going to bring what we believe to be best in class brunch offerings to the community. There's always going to be a regional component to that, at least in the space that we have. We don't get to dictate what the local palate is. No, we're there to assimilate to some extent, but we do feel like some of the things that we have brought. I grew up on corned beef hash. Our take on that is addictive. I mean, it's something that I do. I see it on a lot of other menus, but nobody executes it like we do. So if you can do it with a little panache and a little flair, and you execute it consistently, that can become part of the local piece. If someone demands liver mush and the community demands liver mush, we're going to offer liver mush. I mean, that's what's going to happen. But it really is about being part of the community for us. And I think that's why we're appealing to a lot of franchisees, is that they want to do something. They want to do it in the food space, and they want to do something that's a little bit different. And we allow them a little bit of latitude to get involved. All we ask is that, hey, we're approving the product, and that it's got to be really relevant to what that community is asking for, what that community is about.
And before we dig into the franchise model, because I think the way you've structured it is interesting, I want to talk about eggs.
Yeah,
And not around food costs, but around competitive advantage. So, I've spoken with the folks over at Snooze as well for the show, and like they don't sell eggs; they sell a party. Like that's what like
yeah,
Snooze is
they do.
right. They do.
That's
Like you go in there, and it's like Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. and it's a party. Like that is what Snooze sells. So what does Famous Toastery sell? Knowing that everyone that comes to see you has
yeah.
eggs in their refrigerator.
I look at them as they're a post college party female trying to happen. We are no longer on our parents' insurance at the Famous Toastery. We've got our mortgage handled. We've got stuff to do on the side, and we really are concerned about the foodie aspects and wanting that what we get versus what we pay. Aspect of it. Our omelets, for example, I'm not going to give it away secret, but everybody says, my God, that omelet is different than anything I can A, make at home, or B, get anywhere else. And it is. And it's just one very notable exception. The temperature at which we prepare an omelet is the way God intended it to be. It's not about speed. It's about, there is some actual love and care that go into that. Now, that's experiential for the guest. And we're a little more mature than just, kind of, hey, let's go knock back some brunch cocktails. It's going to happen with flow and pace and a level of comfort. I'm certainly not disparaging the dudes over at Snooze. It's a fun concept, and we get a kick out of it. I have a lot of respect for what they're doing. It's just, we're a little longer along in life. They're pulling up in the Mini Cooper, we're pulling up in the Lexus, and parking it right out front, and walking in. We got something to do after the party. After the brunch get together.
Let's talk about franchising. It's an interesting way to grow. A lot of people choose it, but there are a lot of risks: brand dilution, lack of consistency, issues around culture. So I want to start with the franchisees themselves. What are you looking for? You know what I mean? Like what are the qualities you look for in a successful franchisee?
It's not the same for every brand. I have learned that in my 54 years, by gosh. And for this brand, there is that level of zealotry to go back to that. They've got to be really passionate about wanting to be in their community, um, and active in the community. It's not just about, the investment. The investment's fine. There's a lot of fine investments in the brunch space. I get that. And they've got to be, want the type of person that wants better things. For us, it's about a commitment to quality and a commitment to experience, and it's not going to be a transactional relationship. right? I mean, the way we grow guest counts is one guest at a time. Other people think that there's levers that they can pull. But a franchisee, our best franchisees, did not come from the restaurant space.
Really?
And that's the first time in my career that happened. But most of the franchisees at Muya or Boston Pizza or some of the other places I've been, they had extensive restaurant experience and liked something about that model or about that product offering. Ours are folks, the gal here in Mooresville, North Carolina, who actually waited tables at Famous Toastery while she was a school teacher. She is amazing, has grown into a multi unit operator with Famous Toastery over 10 years. I think people in Mooresville, North Carolina may think she's the mayor, right? But that skill set that she's just brought in, that every guest experience matters, and it has been able to lean in a little bit on what her teaching experiences have been. But fundamentally, it's about some passion about what it is we're doing, and that we matter, and that the people that come into our concepts matter. So it's totally about what the guest experience is, and that they can understand what that is. The business side of it, you got more time than you do in a two shift operation to build the schedule, the forecast, the budget, to pay the taxes, and the other things that go along in the restaurant space. So these folks tend to be really focused on that. And we also find them out, because they're not at work for the dinner shift. They're at Chamber of Commerce events. They're engaged. They're participative in what's going on. It's really been a key thing for us.
And I would assume that over the course of the last 2 dozen locations, you guys have refined your go-to-market. Like, there is a holistic marketing strategy that when you enter an area, before you open, people already know where you're opening, who you are, what you do, why it's special. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, man. We actually, a lot of it out there. Our founder Robert Maynard, still very active in our brand, stopped franchising altogether before it even came into the pandemic. He was like, we need to slow this down because there's a lot of people that want to be part of a brand like this. It's a cool brand. It's a fun brand. It's exciting. It's all that. But he was not in a position to say, I can honestly support these folks the way that, they're going to need to be supported from a franchise organization. Franchising, everybody's got a role. And where people get hurt in franchising is when the expectations and the reality don't hook up. And that's the gap that we've spent the better part of this year, just making sure that when folks come to Famous Toastery with the expectation of building it, our newest guys are in Jacksonville, and they started off as customers. I mean, they were like, wow, we really like this. And we had to make sure they really understood what this was about, what the commitment is in the community, you know, those type of things. So we're really just kind of getting our toe back in the water in terms of franchising. I mean, for us as a franchisor, I've been a franchisee before. I know how I wanted to be treated as a franchisee. And if we can't do that, we're just not going to do it. So we're based in Charlotte, North Carolina. If somebody wants to do a one store deal in Lubbock, Texas, we're probably not in a position to support that effectively, right? So we're going to be very specific about what our growth plans are as we go into a new market to make sure that we can do it appropriately. But a lot of people will take that flyer and just say, yeah, hey, I'll go to Abilene, Kansas, and hopefully we have one that works out there. If you can't support it, it just doesn't make sense.
And so, what does the growth trajectory look like for the business? How are you guys defining success? And I would assume that if you guys stopped franchising prior to the pandemic had to influence how you define growth and success. Yeah.
Well, for sure. I mean, I think the big learning for most of us that were in the industry through the pandemic was that the P&L is not everything, and that the balance sheet matters just as much. And a lot of what we're teaching, not just our franchisees, but our operators and the company restaurants, is cash flow management. I mean, cash is king. So big learning for us on that front in terms of how we're moving forward. So we've kicked around. I mean, we're not here to get a valuation. We're trying to figure out what the brand can be and should be. And we're focused a lot more regionally in the Southeast part of the United States, unless someone said, I've got a plan and I want to do a major market. We would entertain that. We're not actively, sourcing that. What we're looking for right now are just who are the right partners for us and what's the right slice for them to go after. Is it a one store deal in Asheville, North Carolina, or is it the 5 restaurant deal we did in Jacksonville? I mean, Jacksonville's 5 hours away. It's easy enough for us to get to and support those guys, but they have a plan to open that up. Where I've seen brands stub their toe in the past. I've been part of this, for sure. Is when you do these remote locations that just aren't part of anything larger than themselves. Cool thing about Famous Toastery is if there is ever a brand built to do that, it's us because we do focus on the hyper local. If I have one restaurant in Wilmington, North Carolina, which I do, and it's 90 miles from the closest Famous Toastery, and the guests there in that 2.5, 3 mile radius think Joe Kloiber, our wonderful franchisee there, invented Famous Toastery, that's fine with us, right? He can do it, but he's an exception. He's not the rule for franchising. Franchising is about support and the franchisor providing the playbook and the support to make sure that they can get through it. We're blessed with some really good franchisees here.
Well, and I think that there's a lot of parallels between being a franchisee and being a single unit independent restaurant owner and operator. And so for the folks listening, can you describe some of the common issues that your franchisees face and the solutions that you guys have developed? I'm
Yeah,
sure
sure. I think
those
that
things would resonate, you know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think on everybody's mind right now is is labor, right? Is it how do I staff my restaurant? And I would tell you that nobody woke up this morning to make you rich. I mean, nobody wakes up with that in mind. So it really starts with being a really, really good culture to work in and for. Everyone can go down the street and get a job. That's really what we're talking to folks about is making sure that, the studies that have come out in the last 10 years about what's most important to the current generation of team member, where money comes in number three. Everybody needs money. Everybody can find a way to make some money, but do I count and am I heard? Or one and two. So, if you have a culture of that, word of mouth will tend to take care of what's coming into your restaurants. And then, the commodities over the last 5 years have gone nuts. And as a franchisor with company restaurants, and that's kind of a good way to have skin in the game as a franchisor, is that you're experiencing exactly what your franchisees are experiencing. Is that we just talk. I mean, we have to have conversations and understand what conditions are, on at least a period basis. What are folks experiencing? But I think you need to understand what else is going on out there. What else can get you? There's an awful lot of things. We're in the process of a menu kind of renovation piece where over 16 years, Famous Toastery has just kind of gotten big and the menu's kind of expanded. There's a lot of wonderful things, but it's also lost its focus on what we can be best in the world at. And we need to make sure that with our franchisees that and our company restaurants that what we're delivering is consistent. It is exactly what our guests are expecting from the value proposition from us, right? We're not the cheapest place in town. So I think the number one thing we all have to do from time to time, if I'm a single unit restaurant operator and I've been that, or if I'm a franchisee, I've got to go in and see what a guest is experiencing and really look at it from a guest point of view. That's the number one place we fall down. We get so busy looking at what we think is important instead of understanding what truly is important to the guest.
It's so interesting because, I mean, with 24 total units, it's really no different than having one or two as it relates to creep. Whether it is scope creep, menu creep, labor creep, especially, on a long enough timeline. The bar that I had over the course of 12 years, the menus, they just get bigger over time. And then you've got to make them smaller. And then the labor just gets out of control. And then you've got to bring it back. And this creep, this like little teeny tiny momentum that pushes. And it's just one menu item and it's just one more shift. It creates massive disarray. I want to talk about innovation versus focus because in 16 years, and I think, in doing things differently in the way you guys have, there has been a lot of innovation, you know? But I also think that, and this is just my opinion based on my experience, that restaurant owners and operators prize innovation way more than patrons, right? Like, no, You know what I mean? It's like, we need to be evolving and growing. And it's like most people come to us and they order the same shit every time they come in, no matter what you do. Nobody's coming in for your weekly specials. They might have it if they're there, but that's not what's driving the traffic. So, how do you balance this need for innovation with kind of like you talked about, which I think personally, as an entrepreneur and as a restaurateur, is the hardest thing in the world, which is focus. It's being maniacally focused and disciplined on the things that truly matter. How do you guys reconcile that? I mean, individually, but also at scale.
You know, I go back to some of the innovation. Maybe there were fads as I was coming up. I'll start with this. I don't think service today, as you and I are sitting here in 20 on a hot summer day, is any better. In fact, I would tell you it's not nearly as good as it was in 1990. In 1990, we were doing manual payroll. We were doing handwritten tickets. We didn't have KDS screens. We were all handwriting our checks, and we were just focused on the guest experiences. So that's my boilerplate. That's my baseline. And so, some of the best deals you do are the ones that you don't do. OSAT, overall satisfaction, all this data, all the mystery shopper programs that have come along. Nothing against those guys that make their living at it. I don't know that it has a place. I mean, in bigger companies that I've been a part of, the staff is better at recognizing who might be a secret shopper than who is, returning 100 of our guests, which is, I thought, the mission of this thing is making sure every guest that comes in has a great experience. So it's easy to lose that. I mean, my one key metric is year over year guest count. Are we growing guests? Are we better than we were, you know, this same time last year? Now, however, I'll tell you some things that you can kind of run in the background that I think are absolutely worth their weight in gold. Theoretical food cost programs. I mean, is your menu performing the way you intended it? And do you have leakage? The secret to food cost is about utilization. Is as much food as possible being sold to the guest? We're using that's some innovation that pays for itself. But I don't think the guest cares about your OSAT program, right? I mean, they are inundated with that type of data point, that type of data entry, which is supposed to be an innovation. They go to Walmart and they get a receipt that's saying, "Hey, we want to be the employer of choice, and here's a survey." I'm not sure anybody believes them. We can't participate in that. What we are is really a break from the day to day for folks, and that's our place. And if we stay focused there, you tend to be doing pretty good. It's when you jump off. Now, I'm not poo-pooing any innovation that's happened, and I'm certainly not unfrozen caveman ops guy from the '80s sitting here, telling you that all that stuff's bad. But you got to be cognizant of it, and if you really need to understand what it is we're solving for, right? And if it's not around guest experience, team member experience, not growing your sales and not growing your bottom line, you got to really question why you're doing it, because hope is not a strategy. And more, most of the innovations I'm seeing are getting expensive. The case in point around here is we're trying to figure out how AI is going to work with, just our overall business models. And I think the lowest hanging fruit for that's been talked about is real time pricing, where your prices can shift on a day to day basis. And I'm a tiny bit allergic to that right now. Now, I was a tiny bit allergic to third party delivery pre-pandemic, and then that became a way of life for us because I couldn't make that work. But dynamic pricing models that change the price based on what your cost of goods would be based on commodity markets is supposed to be an innovation. I don't think that's what's best for the guest. It might be good for the operation. So that's kind of the internal debate we're having right now: is does a dynamic pricing model work? I am not for it. I haven't found how it's going to grow that one more guest count for us. It might be squeezing profitability. And at the end of the day, if I'm not growing guests, that's where I'm going to poo poo the innovation guideline. Sounds great. Would be wonderful. We got some stellar IT guys running around here, our finance team. They're a lot of fun, probably fun at parties. We'll see. But man, that's not going to grow a guest. To me, that's the end of the road. Am I growing guests or am I not?
What should we steal from you in Famous Toastery? Like an independent restaurant owner operators listening right now, right? Like, what are the 2 or 3 things that they should steal from you?
Yeah, our service model, where every server is the server, and watching that work. I can tell you the best server at Chili's wouldn't last a day at a famous toastery because, that person probably gets a great schedule, does some training for them, and also knows where to hide when food needs to be run. You're not going to make it at Famous Toastery with that. Our mission is to get hot food out to guests. The service model is highly efficient. I think folks would be all over that. Simple scratch, famously fresh is what we're known for and what we tout. But the simple scratch aspect of it is that the way we build our menus, the way we build our offering is the perimeter of the grocery store. We don't do any of that middle of the grocery store stuff, prepackaged things. And when you have supply chain issues, that's where you want to live. You want to have the ability to make as much from scratch as possible. And lastly, I would give everybody our corned beef hash recipe because there's no way you can do it as well as we do. So I'll leave it at that.
How do you keep your team happy?
Um, Man, they got to know they're loved, and that's my job.
Yeah, but, like, how does that manifest? There isn't I mean, and look, you were an independent owner, operator yourself, right? And you started with all these lofty goals, "People are gonna love me, and I'm gonna show people that they're loved," and then you're so busy trying to figure out how to stay alive or how to grow, you don't have time to figure out how to make people feel
Well,
loved.
the
So
short version of that is the 50-year-old me wants to punch the 25-year-old me right in the throat because that guy graduated from washing dishes and started treating people like dishwashers instead of the human beings that they are. Period. And I have absolutely evolved in my career. I also had to wash a lot of dishes because I treated people like that, in my 20s. So I learned it before I turned 30. If you have a team, and we all have teams, there should be, as a matter of your culture, a way to get them together from time to time and talk and find out what's going on in their worlds and in their lives. Most of the time, they are as passionate about their aspects and their role in the business as you are, and they're going to want to talk about it. So if you have a platform to listen, that would be my largest piece of advice to anybody: is put yourself in a position to not just listen but hear what it is they're saying. And I think you'd be really surprised about what's actually going on and what it means to them that you cared enough to hear.
the restaurant industry is filled with these unspoken rules and traditions about how things should be done. How would you like to see our industry turn the tables to create a better future for all of us?
That's a great question.
I know.
That's why you asked it, isn't it?
It is. It is. That's why I saved it for last.
They say, really smart people have great answers. Geniuses ask great questions. You must be a genius. As a stall tactic, can you restate the question, please?
I can. This industry is full of unspoken rules and traditions about how things should be done. How would you like to see our industry turn the tables to create a better future for all of us?
Yeah, I think the internal cultures have always been around seniority and things like that. And there should be something about seniority, but it should go exactly like this. I worked in one brand, I'm not going to name it, but the only time in my history, in 37 years of being in restaurants, I saw someone retire as a server. Most restaurant careers end with somebody throwing their sucker in the dirt, some dirty words, and a no-show for a shift. This particular brand for 30 years, and not a big brand anywhere, had a server retire. And that has always hung with me. And we should be able to offer and provide that type of lifestyle to people that can happen in our spaces, that this isn't just a stepping stone or a temporary place. And those of us that have done it for a while, that egg cook, that grill guy, that server are so important to the business that there's got to be a meaningful way to make a living in this part of our industry. I've seen it one time in 37 years.